Welcome all to our virtual speaker series. My name is Lütge, and I'm a professor of business ethics at the Technical University of Munich and the director of the Institute for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence. With our speaker series, the TUM Institute for Ethics in AI invites experts from all over the world to talk about ethics and governance of AI. These events serve as an important platform for sharing new research and exchanging knowledge. Since our launch in 2019, we were already able to run 25 such speaker series events. And today we are delighted to have with us Dr. Aisha Naseer, Director of Research at Huawei R&D in the UK, with us today to talk about AI ecosystem of trusted excellence. Let me say a few more words about our distinguished guest speaker. Dr. Naseer provides strategic direction on AI research and innovation as an integral part of Huawei R&D UK's work around developing AI standards and trusted, responsible, and ethical AI. Also, she's leading several corporate discussions on strategic partnerships with planning and direction for an ecosystem of trusted excellence. Previously, she led Fujitsu research of Europe's AI ethics research program. Dr. Naseer is an innovative scientist and GDPR certified professional with several patents and a proven record of research publications. Moreover, she's a member of the founding editorial board of the Springer Journal of AI and Ethics and sits on the MIT Sloan Management Review Responsible AI Expert Panel. She received, I should particularly highlight, global recognition for being selected into the top 100 brilliant women in AI ethics list of 2022. We will start with Dr. Naseer's presentation and then open the floor to your questions and comments, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Dr. Naseer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christoph, for this wonderful introduction and also for providing this opportunity to share my thoughts on the IEAI Speaker Series platform. Well, from the perspective of research and development in AI, the concept of ecology or ecosystem plays a fundamental role. This is not only in terms of how the industry research mechanisms are internally run, but also how the future revenue streams will be generated, which are really very important for the industry sector. The ecology also comprehends the geopolitical functions, the regulatory actors, and opinion of the masses that shape the AI landscape. So hence for today's talk, we focus on the topic of AI ecosystem of trusted excellence. That means what is it that is required from the industry perspective and how to realize this in an AI research perspective. So let me share my screen and then we can proceed. And please let me know if you do see my screen.
Yes.
Is it one screen you see?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Okay. So within the ecosystem of trusted excellence, you can see lots of stuff happening in this slide. On the left-hand side is the ecosystem of trust, which is the measure of the capability of practical usefulness of AI, looking at the harmonization of standards, at existing frameworks, and at different standardization mechanisms that are in place, not only in Europe, but also globally. And on the right-hand side is the ecosystem of excellence, which is to do with the testing and experimentation facilities, to do with the test beds, to do with the, the sort of AI sandboxes. And I'm going to go into a bit more detail about it because we all must have heard about the AI sandboxes by now with the Spanish AI sandbox launch in June this year. So for those who are not quite familiar with the harmonized standards, harmonized standards is a European standards that is developed by a recognized European standard organization, so such as the SENS, NLEC, or ETSI, to address a request from the European Commission. So directly that has been commissioned by the by the EC. The manufacturers, economic operators, or conformity assessment bodies can use these harmonized standards to demonstrate that products, services, processes comply with the relevant EU legislation. And having said so, how to actually realize what is stated in the AI Act and what is it that the Commission and the regulatory bodies and the policymakers are expecting from the research conducted within the AI technology sector, and how that can be delivered adequately. And so the delivery of the harmonized standards by the European Standard Organization is requested by October 2024, and this is what is expected to be delivered by different bodies. So you can see different logos of existing standardization bodies. You can see the ISO, you can see the JDC1, the SC42, you can see the DKE, the VDE, and then you can see the ETSI, ITU, IEEE, NISA, and also there is another block which is not quite as ESOs, but these are existing frameworks which are established, like from OECD, from BDV, which is about the Big Data Value Association, the Gaia X, that again is about the data and looking into the different frameworks and infrastructures of trusted sovereignty of the data across Europe, the Council of Europe, and UNESCO, and some others as well. So it's very important to understand how these actors interpolate with each other, or how this ecology is set up into the right set of synergy, and how to strike the right balance between individualism and socialism. That is very important. Ignoring or overlooking one aspect may have a negative impact on the research that is being conducted within the industry sector, and hence that research needs to be translated into the business later. Eventually, as I said, it has to be put into the business revenue streams. We really want, as an industry partner, to have these ecosystems to work together. They have to work in parallel to create synergies. As you know, the next 10 years is a digital decade. So it's imperative for the industry sector to look into these various interpolations of actors from the AI ecology perspective, so that the research that is conducted right at the grassroots level is adequate enough to address and adhere the needs of the system. A bit on the AI Spanish sandbox. So it's the world's first. We know it's not just the Europe's first. So Spain is the first country in Europe to launch the AI regulatory sandbox, and it's also the world's first country to do this effort. And they are the pioneers, I must say. And you can see the actors, the very important actors from the European Commission, as well as from the members of the Parliament, who has put into together the ministers and the head of states from the governments to put this initiative into place, and opening the platform for other actors within the industry, within the public-private sector, between the academia and other regulators to come in and participate and contribute to the sandbox. The kickoff was in June. We all know, most of us might have also attended the launch event. The legal framework is now actually sort of getting into shape, and then in the next month or two they probably would have an open call for participation into the AI sandbox, and providing high-risk applications to start with, and the tool set for testing. And then when it comes to the high-risk applications, because this is the priority, of course, they're not going to ignore the other levels of risk, but because the AI Act is the risk-based approach, they look at the risks and the implications of a particular application or technology into the user market when it is actually being used by the end users. They are basically concentrating to start with the high risk applications. The smart regulations, it's a way to do the smart regulation without hampering innovation. It also allows innovation that deals with the uncertainty. So what is it that they can get out of launching this initiative is that the AI Act can be shaped accordingly to the regulatory assessment being conducted in the sandbox, and then it's sort of like the flexible regulation. So some things might work, some things might not work. A company might say, you know, this article of AI Act or these specifications are not practically feasible to be implemented. So in that sort of scenario, what happens is the outcomes reports goes back to the Commission saying these aspects are not practically feasible. So let's change the AI Act, or let's adapt some of the specifications accordingly to the results and the outcomes from the actual pilot. From the actual project with the real data, with the real mechanisms and research in place. So the role of the sandbox is complementary to standardization. I mean, it's very obvious, and there are some tools and technologies that bring this sandbox as the top priority for many organizations and industries, because when it comes to research, when it comes to innovation, it needs to be trialed out. You cannot have a research just pushed into the market without the evaluation and the testing of the viability and now the safety of that technology and the research. And eventually it helps the stakeholders and to understand the requirements of the EU legislation from the perspective of the AI Act and from the perspective of the research. So that synergy is very important to having created within this ecosystem, you know, that ecology that encapsulates the AI in general. A little bit more on the sandboxes about so regulatory sandbox establish control environment. What do? They are there to test the technologies for a limited time of period based on some test plans that is agreed with different partners and then accepted by the NCA or the national competent authority. Each country has their own NCA. If you Google some NCA lists in Europe, you will see every country has an NCA. For example, in the UK is the ICO. In France is CENIL. In Germany there is, I think, BFDI probably that is dealing with the security of the data, privacy, mainly because the GDPR. So that's what they're dealing at the moment with. In Spain, they have actually launched a new body, which is called the Spanish AI Agency. In English, they have a Spanish name as well. The AI Agency is the NCA for Spain. And it might be the case that other European countries follow the same trend, or they partner with the NCA in Spain, or they have their own NCA. Perhaps UK might say, you know, we have the ICO that's taking care of the GDPR. Let's take another step added on to the responsibilities of ICO, and we give them the AI as well. So let's ICO take the responsibility to become an NCA for AI, for artificial intelligence, and for different pilots that are conducted. So the AI Act really is very supportive of the AI regulatory sandboxes, and the reason is to reduce the regulatory burden. They want to reduce the burden of regulation. So if the regulation is in place and it's not practically implementable, it is not feasible from the research point of view, that is kind of useless, because companies can't do research can't be translated into the products or services and offerings, and then it cannot be put into the market. So the entire pipeline gets disrupted because of a very stringent or impractical regulation. So that's the key reason for the sandboxes to be into the momentum nowadays, and they also emerge as a offering optimal solutions for governments that want to design the regulation with the limited resources. So if you're not going to put in a lot of resources, a lot of people and processes and equipments, and you want to get it done in the simplest way with minimal set of of resources. So you can decommission it. And that's what they've done. They've decommissioned it into the different areas, and they are promoting the use of regulatory sandboxes. And we know the French presidency, the Czech presidency, they're all very interested in exploring more details about how can we do it in reality. And then I've put some benefits and limitations of the AI regulatory sandboxes. I mean, the benefits I think I've explained a lot already. For the limitations, it's first of all, it concerns with regards to proper methodological assessment. So we need to have a test plan in order to have the sandbox. If the sandbox is based on purely just research, ignoring the ecology, ignoring the different ecosystem actors and their interplay, then it's very likely that the outcomes of that research, which is being trialed into the sandbox, would return a value or an outcome that is not expected to be the true reflection of the outcome. And therefore, the test plan needs to be very concrete. It needs to be educated. It needs to specify what is it that's going to be tested, who are the NCAs, what sort of standards or methodological aspects or algorithms or models or whatever it is that you want to test, the data, the quality of the data, what is it that's going to be tested and how it's going to be evaluated. And also, it may not represent a possible impact on the larger part of the society. So this is the kind of the issue that usually research has with the sampling of the data, and how that sample is an adequate representative of the bigger population. So I think that is something which needs to be considered. But if the test plan is very well and concretely defined, then I think this limitation would be quite marginalized. And then looking at this ecosystem from another perspective, from the perspective of research, purely from the research perspective, and the research with the trusted excellence. So when we say that we as an industry conduct research, and the research we conduct is trusted, not just trusted, but it's also excellent. So that contains an amalgamation of various paradigms, an amalgamation of various perspectives to be taken into consideration. So we have their trusted outcomes in place. So companies may develop their products, their services, they may have cloud services, they may have infrastructures and platforms. So whatever the offerings of the organization, whether big or small, SMEs, medium, or even large tech giants. So whatever the research outcomes are translated into the products or services and platforms, that is one aspect to be considered, which interplays with the other aspects, which is the harmonization of standards. We look at the global standards, the regional standards, look at the governance mechanisms in place. And there are many different governance mechanisms in place. I've just put a few for example, the AI Assurance Club, they're doing an AI Assurance, multi-actor governance framework that they have put forth onto their website, and you can Google it. And also looking at the conformity assessment, looking at some other governance mechanisms which have been laid out by small startups. And that's what we see the trend now happening is many startups are starting to emerge, and many governance mechanisms are starting to emerge, but they all are not going to go to the next phase of the future when the AI Act actually comes into the practice. There has to be some sort of synergy. There has to be some sort of harmonization within those frameworks and standards and the mechanisms which are in place. From the third element is a policy and regulation element, which is the principles and the policies and the regulatory aspects. And we can see the time is cutting through. We have the AI Act probably in a year or two. It would be adopted and it would be in place. So the clock is ticking from now, from before and even now. And the fourth element, which is one of the most important elements of the AI ecology, is the testing and evaluation of these all perspectives put into one package. How do we evaluate these? How do we test these? There are some frameworks and guidelines. There are these AI regulatory sandboxes. There are these experimentation facilities. We have several names. We have got NME, we have BDE, we have many organizations in Europe, big and small, in different areas, in different industry verticals, in different industry domains, that are actually implementing and devising the testing and evaluation mechanisms. And also they're considering the standardization efforts, and they're considering the value that the customer or the end user gets from that offering. It could be just that they get a piece of hardware which can detect their heart rate and can keep them onto the mark, saying, you can, the health gadgets, for example, that you are actually on the track or you're not on the track. So it depends what is it that the user is getting out of it, and what sort of mitigational strategies are there. If there is a negative impact, or if there is something which is not expected as an expected outcome, then can we trust that outcome? Can we say that the research has produced a deliverable that can be trusted enough? So from the research and development to the revenue business streams, it's absolutely imperative to consider the AI ecology and the synergies between these different actors. I would love to keep more room for discussion, so I would just end my presentation here. I've got my LinkedIn, the QR code there. If anybody has some more questions that we couldn't cover in today's session, then you're welcome to ask your question on LinkedIn and connect. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your wonderful talk, Aisha. And I should also add that we were already collaborating years ago within the AI for People, and both in the first years of the general committee, as well as in the subcommittee for autonomous driving, which I directed then in 2020. And I'm happy to see how this is developing now, and developing also into the AI Act and the discussions around it. So I think this is really very encouraging. We have a few questions now already that came to me. Let me state them. So based on your personal opinion, but also industry experience, which limitations do you see for the AI Act to be practical?
The limitations to be practical?
Yeah.
Well, it is kind of I would look at this question as a negative of itself. I mean,
yeah, it's quite general question.
Practical. So some of the aspects of the AI Act could be very stringent. So, for example, when it comes to the when it comes to the governance mechanisms, for example, and how the data is being governed, what sort of mechanisms are around that data to see that it can be trusted. There are some loopholes also within the sector. So one of the limitations is that the vertical across or horizontal. So the AI Act is do we look at the implementation from the vertical aspects, or do we look at it from the horizontal aspect? Now, several issues to be addressed before it goes to that point. So one of the example is the horizontal versus vertical. This is one of the limitations that can be put into practice after we have the trial and regulatory sandboxes generating some results.
Okay, thank you. Another question coming up here: how do you see the EC is probably EU? How do you see the EU approach to put out a regulation for data protection, GDPR, in comparison to the AI Act approach, supporting and relying on regulatory sandboxes?
So I think they both in a way complement each other. So the GDPR is looking at the people's the rights, from the privacy perspective, from the data integrity perspective, from how the consumer rights or the rights of the end users are protected when their data is being used. Are there any data governance mechanisms in place? Whether do we have any data custodians, data stewardships, and those sort of governance frameworks when it comes to the data manipulation? The AI Act also looks into the data. They have a section which talks about the data, and in one of the call for the harmonized standards, one of the specifications, one of the TS, the technical specifications that is requested, is about the data, is about the quality of the data, is about how this data is governed as well as maintained. So I think at some point it does have a cross section, and they complement each other. I would not see that as a contradictory measure, but I see that they would complement each other.
Well, thank you. I just want to mention that we, of course, have discussed the upcoming EU AI Act a lot in our institute, and we will actually have Dragos Tudorake as a speaker in this series. I'm not sure if you know it. So one of the next speakers, I think in December, will be him, as well as several others who will be talking about the act and about their impression of what it's going to achieve, and maybe what it's not going to achieve. Anyway, here comes another question. Which role do you think can or will algorithmic auditing play in fostering trust?
Oh, algorithmic auditing. Of course, the auditing of AI technologies is a key, one of the key pillars within the AI Act. It's not just the auditing of algorithms, okay? It's the auditing of the data. It is the auditing of the processes. It is the auditing of the entire process pipeline that organizations runs, especially if you are referring to the R&D, if you are referring to the research, pipeline, then the auditing needs to encapsulate the data, the algorithms, the models, everything that you can think of. And if I would like to refer to the ecology diagram that I showed in the last screen, which was to consider the various elements in synergy. Okay, to answer your question, yes, it would, of course, but I don't think the simple yes is the answer to this question. You have to look at, if you're looking at the auditing mechanism, if you're looking at the governance of that, then it has to be looked into from different spectrums. It has to look into from different actors that play a critical role in ensuring the auditing is adequate and reliable.
Thank you. Another question about the ecosystem, the term ecosystem. The term ecosystem implies complexity. Why is the issue of trustworthy AI in particular such a complicated one compared to other technologies or sectors? And I mean, this, just to say some words about this from my perspective, I think trustworthy AI is a key concept, and ultimately maybe the whole point of doing responsible AI or ethical AI is to generate trust in the systems that companies or others build. But still, the question is, why is it so complicated? What do you believe?
I do agree with your statement, Christoph. I mean, the fact that and I've done several talks previously as well on the broad breadth of the scope of the artificial intelligence. The fact that we are in an era where AI is an integral part of almost every technology domain. Okay, that is the reason why this has become so complicated. Because name a technology, you talk about networks, you talk about cloud, you talk about hardware, you talk about mobiles, you talk about healthcare, for example, within the sector of healthcare, when it is about the simple EHR, okay, electronic patient records or electronic health records. even to that level, which would not have been otherwise considered as AI, what you do with that data. How do you create insights from that data? How do you generate meaningful, actionable outcomes from the data? And what sort of prescriptive analysis is conducted on that data? That really makes a huge impact in making it complicated. Yes, ecosystem is complex, but if the ecosystem is working in harmony, in a synergy, then I don't think it is that complicated. We have ecosystem of life. We have the ecosystem of the, the food chain. We have the ecosystem of the weather. These are some natural ecosystems that are working, in harmony. And what we want to do metaphorically, and that again is a metaphor, is metaphorically, the ecosystem or the ecology of AI, the term ecosystem has been coined for that, because we want all the actors, we want all the different the paradigms, we want all the different technologies to work in harmony and to respect each other's protocols. There are certain protocols at each level that needs to be respected. So I think respect for the human autonomy and respect for the technical paradigms, the research, the development, the innovation sector, and the non-technical sector, which is the human rights, the ethics, the public policy trusts, that kind of software aspects also get impacted, and they're part of the ecosystem. Why? Because if they're not part of ecosystem, then we are missing the entire space. We're just looking at the technology, just looking at the research. We are not looking at when it's going to be implemented, when the business revenues are going to be generated at the end of the day. That's why it's important to consider it.
So would you agree with my statement, which I like to make? I think I've made it before in conversation, that AI will not fly without ethics. So that this is not just a technical problem, and when we are the companies that are developing AI systems are not just solving technological problems, but they have interdisciplinary problems to solve, which also have this ethical, or you can say responsible side or trustworthy side to it, which is not a purely technical question.
I do agree with you, Christoph. The only thing I would like to add to what you just said would be the would be the ways in which we can address it. Mm-hmm. That matters. How we do it, that matters. Yes, I have come across a similar sort of situation where people consider, ethics is just purely a non-technical element and the aspect, and then trust is considered as a more practical aspect. Is how you look at the coin, and which side of the coin you're looking at. And that's why I said in the beginning that we have to strike the right balance between individualism and socialism. And then individualism and socialism are not just purely philosophical anymore. When it comes to the implementation of research from the AI perspective, they are practically technical issues because we are using technology to address them.
Good. Here, so we have other questions. Trust and interpretability are qualitative. Are there techniques to quantify trust without reducing it to a single number?
Yes, there are techniques do we need to quantify it? Is it needed to quantify it? That depends on the matrices, the evaluation matrices that are being developed under the standardization bodies. And they're also looking at what are the frameworks, what are the frameworks that exist to evaluate such techniques and technologies. Now, so rather than saying we need to quantify it, the first question, do we need to quantify it? And if we do, what is it that we need to quantify? And what is the threshold that we want to set up? This is the prime. Then we look at the existing matrices and the efforts that are being generated in the ESOs to develop some new matrices and also some testing and experimentation facilities that are going to develop some new matrices, and they are into play into developing. And then can we quantify all of that? Can we quantify some aspect of that? And which aspect is needed to be quantified? That we can look into a deeper detail. Some elements may just need to be like explainability, for example. We cannot quantify explainability, saying it is number one, number two. Yes, if there is a meta quantification or meta whatever technique, then yes, we can say, okay, this is all abstracted, and then we have some numbers. But when it comes to the fundamentals of evaluating explainability, there are some standards that are being in place and that are being established within the ESOs that can be then reutilized from the industry research perspective into their development cycles. And the researchers, the developers who are actually working at the grassroots level, as I said before, they can utilize these existing and newly developed matrices and standards to quantify and put a label. At the end of the day, I mean, there would be a label saying, you are trusted, you're not trusted. That sort of stigmatization, it doesn't need to be that black and white, but it would be an indicative of what sort of trust levels they have.
Another question, what do you think are important steps for the industry to prepare for the AI Act and related regulatory frameworks? I think you covered a bit of that, but still, what do you think are most important steps at the moment? Can we prepare? I mean,
if you're asking the question particularly from the industry perspective, of course, industry and academia go hand in hand, but the flow, the workflow of both sectors, even though it's complementary, but they work in a different manner. From the industry background and from the industry I'm currently in, I envisage that currently industries are already on their first forefront, forefoot to be more aware of the changes, of the dynamics of the air landscape. And therefore, they are already acting on it. Some have gone into the partnerships with different institutions, public, private sector, regulators, academic, or industry to industry, B2B engagements. Some have developed their in-house trust and ethics AI teams that are continuously on the radar, looking into the updates that are happening in the European Commission, that are happening from the harmonization of the standards, and where the entire landscape is shifting, where the paradigm is shifting. And industries can start from now looking at the research, the grassroots research, not wait for it to materialize and to get mature, and then they have the products, and then they say, oh yeah, now we want to implement ethics or trust. Well, it's there. I mean, I have my my product. I have a product now, right? Now, if I were to implement trust and ethics into it, I would have to decompose it all the way to the minimal level of granularity and say, no, let's do it now. And there's no point. It's a lot of waste of resources, waste of effort and time. So I would suggest, and I think this is already a common sense as well, most industries are actually from the research, and that's why I focused on research in my presentation. From the research, from the core research, is that when you actually implement the specifications from the AI Act, as you said, and that's what is important. Don't wait to the end. Start now.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's what we recommend also to the companies that are approaching us. We cannot wait for that. I always use this example that with other technologies like cars, it took us decades, many decades probably, to implement safety standards like seatbelts, for example. How long did we have to wait before seatbelts? Seatbelts were used in cars. So we don't have that much time for AI, definitely not. So we cannot wait 50 or 60 years.
Of course.
And but a lot of companies in Germany as well are worried about what will this act now bring. Now, yeah, worried, not just in negative sense, could be in a positive sense, but the same, what can we do about it? But I tend to also say, if you have never worried about these problems, then you should really be doing this or reworking what you are doing, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, it's never too late. I mean, still things are, I mean, until the act is actually adopted and is there in place, there is a room for, you know, grasping the pace and to get on board for different organizations. And let me also mention the fact that it's not just for the industries, it's not just for the academic institutions, it's not just for the philosophers, it's also for you know, citizens who are some way related to technology, or even if they're not related to technology, they're using the technology. You know, they need to understand what are their rights. They need to understand what is it that this AI Act is going to bring into their life, how it's going to impact them, and what is it the contribution they can make. I had a talk earlier this year, a few months ago, at the UN platform, and one of the comments I made there was, it's not only the issue or the, you know, the matter of the technologies. It's not just the issue of the people who are involved in the industry or who are in the academia or who are doing some research and who are, like, you know, classified as intellectuals, or, you know, they're working in this field, but also for the layman. Also for the layman, you know, it's impacting my mother, it is impacting, you know, my grandma, or in one way or the other, it is impacting the youth who are just starting to learn these practices. And we have seen, you may also agree on that point, Christoph, that many universities have started research programs and their masters in ethics of AI and in the trust of AI, and the effort that you have done, Christoph, in the IEAI is a remarkable, I mean, effort that's
Thank
very
you.
obvious, and I would say one of the pioneers in the sector.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are doing our best. So I think this is the development of AI ethics has impacted so much in various sectors and in academia as well. But my impression is that the UK is particularly fast there. Is also with regard to the rest of Europe. What is your impression?
Well, I would not comment on that as such. I mean,
Okay.
yes, UK has their own, you know, they have their own frameworks. You know, there are some policy papers that are being released by, you know, the government, and some of the ministers are also engaged into that. Yes, there are efforts, of course, but I would not say if they're ahead or not ahead. I would say at the moment, everybody is striving throughout the European and the UK and globally as well. But one thing I can say for sure, that Europe as a region, you know, the UK is also, you know, we are in the same region. That region is actually ahead of the other you know, regions, far east or far west. So as a region, this is ahead as compared to other regions, and many other regions are following the practices being conducted in Europe and the UK. So yes, it's kind of, you know, a synergy that everybody is working towards, which is good.
Actually, this would have been the issue that I would have brought up, maybe also as a final issue, the role of Europe and in shaping the future of AI and the future of AI ethics and AI governance as such. Is that, and we have several questions with this intention now here. Is it going to be of help to Europe? So in the entire AI, in the process of developing AI and also implementing AI in the world, is it a competitive advantage for Europe to be there on the forefront in this topic of AI ethics and governance? What do you think?
Well, everything comes with some pros and cons. So, so yes, there is a competitive advantage, but also there is this test and trial and the risk to failure. Always there, because the first starters, the ones who do it the first, are at a lot of uncertain environmental contextual factors are there. We never know this would work or this would not work. We can only learn it by trying it, and that's the whole point of research as well. You learn it by trying it. If you know the answer, it's not research. So and I think I would take a positive more than negative. So yes, they have a competitive advantage, and I would envisage that they would learn, and we are learning. We are learning as the time passes, as we see that the first shape of the AI Act and what we see today is different, and I would say it's improved. And perhaps tomorrow, I mean, in the next version of the amendments, would have it even better. Spain is the first country to have the regulatory sandboxes on AI, right? They would have many hidden trials, and some of them might succeed, some of them might not. But the good thing is that they would learn. When they would learn, they will improve. When they would improve, it would be a better synergy. It would be a better ecology. And that would be an exemplar for the external, from the outside world as well. I mean, looking at Europe, saying, oh, wow, they've done it. This worked, this didn't work. Let's follow the steps. So eventually it's a good practice to be at the front.
That would be nice. I sometimes from the conversations that I have with people from the industry, one worry that comes up frequently is this going to be a GDPR 2.0, and then if they believe this will be the case, then they are rather not very positive against it. I have to say. I understand this in a way that GDPR, definitely has its merits, but would probably need an update at some point. And I think there are some things that should be improved, or maybe at least some lessons to be learned for the AI Act, so that maybe some problems that we had with the GDPR can be avoided here in this case. I don't know if you have a comment on that, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it might not be a GDPR 2.0. That's from the AI perspective. I mean, there would be some upgrades and some changes, because it addresses not just the data side. It addresses many other aspects. It addresses many other sides, as you know already when we were working on it together. From the European Commission's perspective, they have looked into the fairness, they're looking into the human rights, they're looking into the accountability, they're looking at the data, they're looking at several different aspects, including the governance. And the GDPR is focusing on one particular aspect. So I think there would be some reflections that need to be encapsulated within the GDPR in a revision. But I could see them working together. I can see them, from my understanding and experience, they complement at the end of the day. It's going to make a huge impact, because when we are into the standards discussions and meetings, the data aspect of the AI Act, usually one of the very common comment is that, oh, GDPR covers it, so we could just take it from there, or we don't have to reinvent the wheel, which is a good thing. We don't have to spend a lot of resources in doing what's been done, so let's invest it into some new research.
Right. So we have for some final questions around this issue. Well, one is if the current discussion on AI ethics and AI governance focuses a little on the European perspective, does this leave out other priorities from the rest of the world? What do you think?
The AI Act, I mean, in its sense, the European Commission has put this into the revisions and open for discussions and opinion from different reviewers. It does not, in my understanding, it does not state that it is the global act. Okay, it never claimed that it's going to be a global act. However, the other non-European regions and geographically set actors, they can learn from it, they can adapt it, they can say, yes, we are basing our act based on the European AI Act, but also we would add these amendments or we would have these modifications. So they have set a baseline. This baseline is comprehensive enough to be considered on a global scale. And can be adapted according to the regions, according to the different demographic settings, according to the different geopolitical actors and the contextual environmental factors. So they don't claim it to be global, but it is useful for the global global positioning of trusted AI research.
Great. And I think this might be the last question. How much of an ecosystem of ethical or trustworthy AI can be instilled from above by regulation and management policies? And what should be the role of training computer scientists and developers already at university or even earlier?
So these are, as I said, if you look into the ecology, these are two different sides of the spectrum, right? So the pool of researchers, developers, or I would say the skills set that is being trained at the universities, these are going to be the actual hands-on when they are ready to implement and to realize. Because imagine 5 years have gone past by, or 2 years after the AI Act has been in place. Now what? The standard organizations are delivered. The act, the policymakers, the regulators, they have delivered, it's there. Now you have to do it, okay? So when it comes to now you have to do it, it's not just the processes, it's not just the organizational, hierarchical or the matrix of the technologies, but also it matters from the perspective of the operational strategic level, operational level, technical level. They all need to be in sync in order to have this delivered. And this question really ties very nicely to one of my responses at the MIT Sloan Management Review that I contributed as a panelist, also co-conducted by the Boston consultancy. It was whether it should be on the top management agenda or should it be, also put through to the operationalization. And my argument was that it needs to be considered throughout the operational, strategic, and tactical levels, because you cannot ignore that is just being considered at the research and core research, and the management doesn't care about it, or it's just considered at the management level for the for the publicity, and in practice it's not actually implemented. So it needs to be throughout, and it would help if it is throughout.
Okay, thank you very much. We are almost out of time, but I wanted to take a final moment to let you know about our upcoming events. First, for the TUM Sustainability Day, our IEAI researchers will be presenting on AI for Sustainability, Opportunities and Challenges on October 27th here at Maasstraße 20, room 140. And our next in-person speaker series will be on November 8th on Regulating AI, a comparative view with Christian Jeffel, who is a professor of law, science and technology at TUM, again in Maasstraße 20, room 134. 7. For more information about these and other events, please visit the IEAI webpage and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I would like to once again thank Aisha Naseer for accepting our invitation, and all of you for joining us and contributing to the discussion with your questions, comments, and remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.